you. Good evening here in the UK. I know it's a bit earlier for you on the Eastern Coast and even early on the West Coast of America, but I've got a beautiful guest here. Her name is Karen Joy Almond. Do you just name yourself Karen? Do you add Joy in because of any reason?
Some people do, some people don't. Either way.
But you've got an unusual spelling, so most people obviously can't spell it with an E, but it is with an An. I don't know whether that's a reduction on the name Anne, but
It's a gift my mother gave me because my aunt's name was Karen, so she decided to spell it different, not knowing that the English translation is purity, but the African translation is tyrant. So my dad used to call me a tyrant.
I love it. I love that.
I'll keep it.
That's great quirkiness. That's wonderful. So I have been introduced to Karen through a mutual friend, and this friend I connected with, or we forged a friendship. Totally online, obviously, given the geographical distance. And her name, if you're fairly new to the group, you might not have listened to the earlier interviews that I've conducted, but I interviewed Amy Moscow, and on the theme of affirmations and on the theme of intentions, if I recall correctly. So if you are interested in learning more about that, because with one of them, the intentions, she gave us a crib sheet, or she gave me, which I could pass on to you if you're still interested in how you set intentions that really, really work with your energy to create what you desire. So back to my guest now, Karen. So yes, so Amy said, if you're on the subject of love and relationships, this is the lady you've got to speak to. She has a real powerful story to share. So Karen delightfully gave me a quite a comprehensive bio. So I'm going to, forgive me for just reading out to you because I think I could never memorize it. So Karen Joy, whatever. Karen is an oral systemic consultant, professionally educated in medicine and dentistry. However, her personal life experience with complicated love relationships and health led her to study many systems in energy medicine, and that's why I think we've connected. Karen recovered from a neuro lyme disease illness, that she was told she was not likely to recover from. Karen did regain her health and function after she realized that her illness, although real, was opportunistic and that she was not a victim of her illness. Karen then found that she had to apply the same technique to her friendships and love relationship. While Karen uses multiple techniques, a major first step involves being willing to look at where we are set up in our own where we are at. Willing to look at where we set up our own roadblocks, to the things we most desire in life. Taking radical responsibility for wherever we find ourselves in a struggle of any kind does not mean that we were necessarily conscious of how our thoughts and beliefs. Sorry, I'm just wondering if I've skipped a line. AKA narrative contributed to the development of physical symptoms. Karen believes there are many systems that can help people do this work, but many are as fragmented as the current healthcare system. For herself, she discovered a way to marry the body, mind, spirit aspects of healing. Karen believes that self-love and emotional autonomy are at the root of our life experience, determining whether we are in a vibration of resonance or dissonance. The frequency we emit will attract more of that frequency, which I've talked about this a lot in the group. Therefore, as individuals, we are empowered with the ability to change our frequency and watch our lives change in sync with our efforts. So, Karen, just leading on to how we can sort of, go into this a little bit more in detail. So how does your experience with your illness translate to what you're learning about love and relationships? So that's quite a profound question, and it's asking you to open all the wounds.
Well, fortunately, that's kind of what life has done for me. It's led me to a point that I can't be anything except authentic. And so talking about the illness, chronic illness in the world right now is huge. We have so much coming at us. And Lyme disease is something that wasn't very well understood in terms of being chronic illness when I became ill. And so I was not diagnosed. It took about 11 years before I got a proper diagnosis. So I was treated for everything. It was neurological Lyme, so I was treated for potential MS, which made everything worse because they gave prednisone. You don't do that with a Lyme patient. I was sent for psychological treatment, and every drug they put me on made me 10 times worse than I was without it. And so they didn't understand. They were treating symptoms the best that they could, but they had no idea what was really going on. And no one ever talked to me about a few things. One of those things is, well, what's going on in your mouth? It's like, that was completely separate. And I had a mouthful of heavy metals, which were impacting me. And my diet wasn't the greatest. Didn't exercise. I didn't do any detoxification. So when I got sick, I got really, really sick. And the first thing they did, because of the pain, is put me on high dose narcotics. And I became addicted to fentanyl. I was given high dose fentanyl, the kind that from my nursing days, that's what we gave, terminal oncology patients. And I was on that 24/7 with every 4 hours, believe it or not, fentanyl lollipops for breakthrough. And so not only was I dealing with that aspect, because that changes your personality, but I was also dealing with what I didn't know at the time was changes in my brain due to the Lyme disease. And it wasn't until I went to the Amen Clinic and had a SPECT scan done that we realized that my processing and my memory was very, very impacted. At the time, I could not remember more than about 3 numbers, and I would see things on the clock backwards. If it was 3 o'clock, I would see 9 o'clock. If I would drive somewhere, I would get off the wrong exit and freak out because I didn't know how to get home. It didn't occur to me that I had a GPS and I could, So there were a lot of things that were going on that for me, I just didn't understand. So I became angry. The anger was, of course, covering up the fear that I was feeling, because I really thought I was developing dementia, is what I thought was happening. And so, of course, when everybody came at me and tried to help, everything they said just sent me off. And I was very impulsively angry. But that, as the pain and the continued physical disability began to set in, I became really depressed and I didn't want to be here anymore. I was real angry. And I wouldn't say that my relationship with God was the best at the time, but I had to be angry at somebody, and my family was just done. They wouldn't deal with it. They just walked away. So I basically stayed in a dark room and didn't really interact with a lot of people. So I was angry at God. And having, really committed my life to the care of patients who had cancer and being out all hours of the night because I wouldn't let anybody else take care of my patients, I felt like a victim. It's like I did all of this, and now here I am. My friends are gone. My family doesn't believe me. They're not, taking care of me. Basically, poor me syndrome. Now, it was real what I was going through, but I still knew that I knew that there was some explanation for what was going on. So I was really angry because I couldn't find out. So I ended up with a therapist, and a couple of things happened to me that I call my come to Jesus moments, and I'll tell you both of them. The first one was because I was so angry and I had decided that I wanted to die, but I didn't trust that I could commit suicide and do it right. I was afraid I'd be left here paralyzed.
Abortive attempt, is it? Oh God, it was even more disfigurement.
I'm not even kidding. It's really the only thing that stopped me. And so, and I laugh about it because I have a different relationship with death, because I lost my father, at 17, and I went into hospice nursing. And so my relationship with death is not really one of fear. It's more one of curiosity. And so but for my family's sake, and especially my mother, I didn't want to do it. And so my thought many times was, geez, I worked with all these people with cancer and I can't even get something, like I do everything wrong. I can't even get cancer and die right. Well, I did. I manifested melanoma. And so I ended up with melanoma, and this doctor and surgeon telling me I would probably have the surgery, but need chemo and radiation. The lesion had been there for a really long time. It was pretty big. The biopsy was unclear. So I go in thinking, okay, I got this. I'm going to go through the surgery, but they know that there's no way I'm putting that toxic chemo in my body. And so they'll accept now that I'm going to die appropriately. Well, they did the surgery and I didn't need chemo and I didn't need radiation.
Wow.
And I never had another problem. And so that I was angry, really. I wrote about that in a book published by Dr. Andrea Pennington, It's Time to Rise. And so my chapter is Hooray for the Grim Reaper. So I still look at it with a humorous perspective at this point. My mind was obviously not working right. But the other thing that happened is after that, I started therapy. And this was an amazing therapist who knew better than to directly challenge me. And so he asked me one day when I was feeling extraordinarily hopeless, what are you grateful for? And I said, you're insane.
Not a lot.
I ain't grateful for nothing. Would you be grateful for? And I listed off everything. And he's like, okay, you're pretty good at making lists. So let's do this a different way. I want you to go home, give you some homework. Every day, I want you to write one thing that you would not give up. And so the first thing I wrote, I was in the shower and I wrote water. Because back then, if I had the energy to get in the shower every 3 days, it was a good week. And I was thirsty all the time. So I started writing water in the steam on the shower wall. And within about 2-3 months, I had a whole list on my wall and it just suddenly hit me. Oh my gosh, this is what I'm grateful for. These are the things I can be grateful for. They're little things, but what if I shift my focus to this? And in the process of doing that and using some other techniques of really going in and looking at what my feelings were and owning that I was a victim of my symptoms and all of that. But if I continued to carry that victimization into my future, it was never going away because I continued to invite it by owning it. And so over time, I got better. I realized that, and the reason I'm an oral systemic consultant is because of what I went through. There is a dentist who is biological, non-toxic, and the most comprehensive dentist that I know. And I found him, and he was actually 10 minutes from my house. And he removed 11 root canals and all of my amalgam fillings. And most people do not know this, but every root canal is infected because it's dead tissue. There is no blood supply to it. It's the only place in the body that is legal to leave dead tissue. And so I had all of my upper right root canaled and my molar. So I removed all of those. And then the dentist hired me to work in his office and I apprenticed with him and I learned a whole lot about it. And so I eventually went full time. And when I got to full time, my ex-husband decided that he couldn't take it anymore. Now, things were better, but for him, things had been so bad for 12 years that I think he just needed a clean break from it. He wasn't able to see it for what it was. He saw that as how I was and my true personality. And that's okay because that needed to happen. But then I lost almost everything that I thought made my life worth living. My home, my kids, my dogs, my car, my best friend over the course of the next 2 years. And so after that, I spent 2 years not wanting to date, but then when I lost my dogs, I was extraordinarily lonely and I went on a dating site as many friends had tried to get me to do. And first man I saw, I felt like I recognized him. And we met and it was an immediate connection. It felt like one of those, soulmate twin flame things.
Yeah, twin flame.
Yeah. And so, okay, I've healed. This is great. This is all going to work. I got it all figured out. Not so much. So what I learned during the course of that relationship is what twin flame relationships really are. And I have had to do the exact same thing, but I've used a couple of different systems in order to understand that I am never a victim in a love relationship. I could be in one moment, but 5 minutes later, if I'm carrying that, that's my responsibility. I'm doing that to myself. And I'm still working through it. It's not, it's not perfect, But what's happened for me is I've been able to see the path forward.
Oh gosh. So you've literally had to reinterpret or redefine yourself in a way, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's this whole new self. Is this a total opening up and revealing yourself, and just showing the underbelly almost, isn't it?
It kind of is. And the thing is that when you start doing that, it's almost like in a 12-step program. Somebody's an alcoholic and they decide to stop drinking. Everybody wants them to stop drinking because they don't like the way they behave. But guess what? Many times when that person stops drinking, it upsets the whole apple cart because everybody knows how to deal with that person's dysfunction. But when they start healing and taking care of themselves, then all of a sudden, whoa, wait a minute. We don't like you like this. We don't like the changes you're making because we don't know how to handle you anymore.
Yeah.
So
I totally get that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's everything's moved, isn't it? That all the instruction manual's gone out the window. They don't know how to cope. It's like
yeah, so I think the instruction manual needs to be written because the insidious programming that goes on for us from the time we are born, it tells us who we are and how we are supposed to be, and the inner conflict that it sets up for us in life it's pretty extreme.
Yeah. So what do you think were the unhelpful patterns that you inherited, the programming that has possibly contributed to your life's experiences in the way that led to possibly this illness? Okay, you said it was a real thing, but how much was it derived from this sort of programming?
So, well, in terms of the illness, there was illness in my family. So my observation in my family was that my grandmother was really my person. She had a sense of humor that just wouldn't quit. But she was also snarky too. And I like people who have a little snarkiness. And I don't know what that's about, but she had rheumatoid osteoarthritis and had a lot of pain. And she pushed and she pushed and she pushed herself. My mom, on the other hand, was very young when my grandmother was going through the worst of it, where she really couldn't function. So my mom had a lot of extra responsibility as a young person. And she never really learned how to have fun. And she never really learned how to let herself go. When I look at her, she's like this, just this ball of string or wires. And you feel like if you just touch her, everything's just going to pop out. So controlled. So what I learned through observing my family and in the church and even with some teachers is that you have to control yourself. Don't get too happy. Don't say too much, hold everything inside. We'll let you know when you can speak, when you can have an opinion, when you can be empowered to do anything. My saving grace is that I am a stubborn cuss. And I have kind of a story my partner and I joke about. My mom, once I had raisins and they dropped them on the floor and she was trying to force me to pick them up. And she literally was putting my hand on them and I was holding my hand like this. No, I never did this.
Power struggle.
And so my partner will look at me now and go, yeah, I know you're not picking the raisins up, okay? Because I have my limits. But that comes from this programming that told me I am not valuable. I have to behave in a certain way to be loved. If I act in a way that somebody else doesn't like, they're going to leave me, whether it's emotionally or physically. And so it taught me to both cling on to things and to be somebody I was not, so that people would not leave me or think poorly of me. So my whole life, everything I did revolved around how do I please the other person. But what I was feeling on the inside was angry and like I had been taken advantage of, almost like I was trapped, like I was caged.
Yeah, it sounds like you were denied being your authentic self and finding your way back home to your soul.
Yes. And I spent a lot of years blaming my parents. My father died when I was 17, and I spent many, many years. He had been an alcoholic and had stopped drinking, but I spent a lot of years blaming my parents. And before I got sick, I realized what I was doing, and I had gone to, various workshops and retreats and had learned that they actually did the best they could. They didn't know any better. Nobody taught them. But what I had not really put together is that I had also not been given that manual and told how to live. And so in the last 3 years, there are two systems that I feel like gave me that manual and gave me the how and the why and the how. So that has been my gift in the last few years. And that's how I've kind of been able to take all of this stuff and wrap it into what I do with people. And if people just want to work on the physical with their health, that's fine. I'll do that. But most of the people I work with, after a while, they begin to give me little bits and pieces of information, and I begin to kind of lift up what's on the surface and see what's underneath there. And some people are ready to work on that, and other people aren't. And I'm going to tell you, it's tough. I've had a lot of luxury. I've had a lot of downline. Oh, there's the St. Bernard I told you about. Sees a bunny, I'm sure. But, if you if you're busy, you're working 40 hours a week and you got kids and, all of the kids stuff with school and it's almost like you just don't have the time to focus on yourself. And I see that with women a lot. It's like, well, I know I have all these emotional issues, but I just don't have time to focus on me because this and that. But eventually, and that's why I say it's opportunistic, these illnesses, because if we do not keep our frequency and vibration in a state of health and homeostasis, then somewhere something is going to break down. It starts in the energy field, but it does move into the physical body. And that's what I think happened to me.
I think because I'm a touch therapist as well. So when I do, I always talk to them, and when they come to me, we talk sometimes about their family dynamics and their issues and troublesome relationship with mother, looking for an elderly loved one and so forth, and how they sometimes can appear ungrateful or always moan. And then they in turn resent doing that for that act of service and the act of love, supposedly, because the way it's not being received or not, not received in the way they would like it to be received, and right. Acknowledged. And but then what they do realize is that causes friction emotionally, isn't it? It causes an energy, what I call this resistance, and the impact that has obviously on our body and our ability to function on a cellular level. So this idea of anger, sometimes resentment, and that how that shows up, then physiologically. And you say you're a prime example of that. It's like this keeping this lid on things, but this it's like a pressure pot, isn't it? It's ready to explode its top. And I think that's what happens. And the explosion is then when you really come out with full-on symptoms of something or other. And you've totally ignored it. You totally ignored then the build-up of the steam, and that you're coming to the brink.
Right. Well, don't you find too that, like, with your clients sometimes, I mean, I don't know if you feel this with them, but I know I felt it with them myself, and I felt it with people I've been very close to, where because we are so conditioned and programmed to think certain things, that all comes from the external. And we're kind of taught not to pay attention to the internal. So let's just say you are worried about how your parents are doing something. But the truth is that's an external focus. The focus needs to be on your own feelings, I think. And we don't always have to fix something that somebody else is doing. They're on their own journey. And it's not always ours to fix. At least that's what I feel.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think people feel that they have to fix other people, when really all it comes down to is you've only got yourself to look out for. And it's, what's going on emotionally for you, what's happening inside of you in your inner world.
Yes.
And dealing with that, and if there's some facets of your personality or your psyche that you're not happy with, then just reflect and thinking, how can I shift that, and how can I express myself more lovingly and be kinder. It's complex, isn't it? Because like you want to project love and kindness, but then when we fail to do it for ourselves, there's a disconnect there, isn't it? It's like, yeah.
It is. Well, one of the systems that, one of the systems, well, I'll tell you both of them. Human design was the first thing that I did. And human design is simply a system that looks at the mechanics of how energy flows through the energy centers. And there are so many different possibilities. And this system is very complex. It takes 4 years to become an analyst. I've only trained to be a living your design guide. And that's really as far as I want to go with it. I really did it mostly for myself, but as life would have it for me, if I'm going to do something, I kind of want to take the training and learn how to do it for other people. And then what I do is I pull aspects from those things, but I never really take usually a certification, and that's all I'm doing. For me, it's I put it all in a pot and mix it up, and somehow it comes out and it works. But with the system, what I learned about myself is that I have one full channel connecting 2 centers. And that channel is the channel of struggle. And so what I learned is that, oh, I'm actually supposed to have all these struggles in life. This is my life purpose theme, is struggle. It's just I have to learn what is worthy of struggling with. And then I get the gift out of the struggle. And that's what gives me the ability to then share that gift with somebody else who is struggling. And in this system, we have both defined and undefined centers. The undefined centers are where, I don't know if do you know who Barbara Brennan is? I don't know if your viewers do.
No, I don't think so.
About 30 years ago, I started with Barbara Brennan, and she did a lot so she's got great books out there on what happens as people come towards each other and how the energy moves between people. And she would do workshops and experientials where you could really learn to feel this stuff. And so that was my first exposure to that. And when we are with somebody else, if we have an open, let's just say our emotional center is open and undefined, and theirs is defined, or even undefined, either way, what happens is either the person with the undefined or both people with the undefined, they will pick up feelings from somebody else. And they will begin to express that feeling. And because it's not really their feeling, they're looking around in their environment to make sense of that feeling. And of course, who are we going to blame? The partner, the kids, the dog, something, And so we don't even understand that we are amplifying and distorting the emotions of other people that do not even belong to us. And learning that for me was huge.
Wow.
Because I am highly empathic. I'm highly intuitive. And I didn't realize, I used to say to my ex-husband, I feel like I'm doing your work for you, but I really didn't understand what that meant. And he never did either. Well, now I do. I was doing his work for him. He was not an emotional person. So I would pick his emotions up and I would act it out all over the place. And I looked like the lunatic that everybody can point the finger at. I did it to myself. I just didn't know I was doing it to myself. And so what the system also taught me is that I have what's called an open, completely open with no potential activations in what's called a G center, which is your center for love and direction. So my whole life, no matter what was happening, I'm always looking for love in somebody else, and I'm always looking for direction, because when we have these open areas in our design, we are looking for someone else to hook us up, so that we become defined and we have that direction and we have that love. And not that that's bad, but you got to have the right person who's able to do that. And sometimes we choose the person who it seems like they're going to hook us up, but the more our energies mix, it's not a great hookup. There's a lot of hiccups and problems there. And so it's really about learning. For me, it became about learning my own design. And and in human design, you can go on YouTube and find so much stuff, and it's a lot of theory, but you cannot possibly understand this system until you actually start applying it and using it in your life. And it's very much like the second system I went into, because that system is very mechanical. I met Amy. You mentioned Amy at the beginning, and her program, Sacred, with her intentional healing systems, I took that with one of her certified practitioners, Dr. Kimberly Woods, which was amazing.
She's been in here before as well, talking.
Yeah, I love both of them so much. They have
Yeah.
been such great mentors for me.
Mm.
And so what that has allowed me to do is take what I've learned with the mechanics of my design and then bring in the empowerment through the spiritual connection, and really the idea of manifesting, not forced manifesting. I think we can manifest anything. I manifested cancer. So you think about it enough, you can bring that energy to you. And just learning the way that they language things in that program, or help you. They don't do it for you. You set your own intentions and affirmations and things like that.
But they guide you in the structure of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, learning that language. And I did that 21-day program, and I was committed, and nothing was getting in my way. And that's how miserable I was, because my health was beginning to suffer. And it was suffering because I was still doing the same thing in this relationship that I was doing in the other relationship. Please, please, please. And then feeling like a victim. And I don't know what changed in me, but it's been a real, true, authentic change. Am I perfect? Never will be. And that's okay. But what I've learned is that I have a lot more ability. I'm more empowered to have more control over my life experience than I formerly was told that I have. And that's been a real gift for me.
Yeah, it's that sense of empowerment, but along with it, some compassion, I hope, for what you've had to
that's
contend with.
a good point. That is a really good point, because I do see a lot of women who are finding their empowerment. And I'm not very popular sometimes when I say this, but this idea that all men are narcissists. I do not believe in emasculating the man just because the woman has been empowered. I think that if we really want a good relationship, we have to be with the right person, number one, but we have to build them up too. It's not just about taking your power and setting boundaries and doing all this crap. What Amy taught me, and I love it, and Kimberly too, is that we don't really need to set boundaries if we're not afraid that somebody's going to do something to us that's going to be hurtful. And so Amy calls them parameters. And I've really been working on that as well, in terms of just saying, this is what I am able to do, and this is what I am not able to do. And then let the other person decide, because sometimes people, they decide that this is not what
It's
I
not
want
for them. Yeah.
And so hanging on to those relationships,
For all the wrong reasons, really.
Yeah. So I think the word empowered, needs to be understood and defined as well, because being powerful is not always the same as being empowered. I think when we try to be powerful by taking someone else's power away, or by putting down hard and fast rules for other people more than we do ourselves, I'm not sure that's real empowered. To me, it's just, basically, for me, it's kind of what was done to me as a child.
It's almost disempowering the other, isn't it?
Yeah. It's just flipping the role. That's it.
Yeah.
And when you flip the role, you're not going to get that love, not that pure love. And people may do what you say because you're threatening them or whatever, but it's not authentic love. It's obligatory love.
And I think the heart of that is actually being openly expressive of who you are, what your desires, isn't it, and what your intentions are. And knowing, accepting all your history that has led you to become the person you are today, isn't it? And it's like taking the whole package, really. And it's there for them to then say, is that something I can live with? Is that somebody I could love or not? And then they are empowered to make that decision, and for you not to cling to an expectation that you are deserving of their love, unless you stand strong in your own energy first. That's what I'm trying to say, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think For me, I don't know if this is the same for everybody. I can only speak my experience. And for me, but the two things that kept me from being really authentic in love relationships, is the fear of being judged, or being too vulnerable, and then being able to use that against me later. My weakness, and I don't like to be weak, who does? And fear of losing something that I didn't want to lose. Because, I mean, I've been married 3 times and in 2 serious relationships. So just call me Liz. I've tried it all. And I think that there were many aspects of those people that I didn't want to lose. So I never really stood up, and said, this is who I am. And this is how my life needs to be. And this is what I'm going to do. And let them make the decision. Can they live with that? Now, I'm not saying that, there can't be compromises made, but I think that sometimes we do hang on for the wrong reasons.
You said before I don't know whether there's anything else you want to add, but you said you had something that you could offer for free. So just tell me what that is.
So one of the other modalities that I use, I've been working with Bioresonance for about 8 years now. And previous to this year, most of the machines that I've worked with have been provider machines in their office, and they're like $40,000 machines, and they're incredibly accurate and they do work. But you really need to work with them frequently. So for me, it had become cost prohibitive. I just could not, and I live 2 hours away now. I just couldn't drive over and do it anymore. And a device came on the market that is remote, and it's the size of a cell phone, and it's amazing. And it has helped me and my family so much.
What's it called?
It's called AO Scan.
AO what? Sorry.
Yep, AO Scan.
Oh, Scan. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'll give you a free scan too. So what I'd like to offer people, because for me, it does look at many things. It's got way more features than this, but the feature that I love that most bioresonance does not have is the ability to pick up your emotions. And the way that's done is through your voice, your vocal cords. Our vocal cords change when we have an emotion, and they've matched about 12 different emotional ranges to different octaves. So when the octave in your voice changes, the equipment using scalar waves and oscillating frequencies, and it's a lot of techie stuff that most people don't want to know, but if you did want to know, I can't explain it all, but I can send you to the company and they can. All I know is it works. And so by sending me just a little bit of information, I can set up a profile. I need a 10-15 second recording of your voice, and I send people instructions on how to do it. And then I can send you an emotional scan, which will show you 4 primary emotions that are showing up based on your vocal cord reading. And it will also give you colors that are a balancing frequency as well. It will give you the systems that may be impacted health-wise related to those emotions, some potential causes for it. And it will also give you the negative expression of that emotion and the positive expression of that emotion. And then there are tones that come with that. There are musical tones that have a frequency underneath. So that's emailed to the client, and then you can download it. And what I advise people to do is to download them and put it on a loop and do like a 20-30 minute meditation. After having written some little 3x5 cards, when you look at the positive expression of the emotion, write some affirmations for that on a card. And while you're listening to the tones, just keep reading them. And it really does help. We have autistic kids in our house, and it's been useful for that. And so in order to do that, you would just send me an email, reference the show, and ask for your free inner voice scan. And then I will send the instructions on how to do it, or what you need to send to me to set up the profile.
That sounds absolutely intriguing and fascinating. I can't wait to do it. So, is there a particular time when you record yourself? Is there a better time of the day, or is it? Do you need to hydrate properly first, or because obviously
Yeah, we always need to hydrate. But here's the only thing. I tell people that for their initial scan especially, what I need from them really is a about 15 seconds. And you start off with saying, I am, and say your name. And then any demographic information that's just facts, that doesn't have an emotion behind it. I still do mine that way. Some people will specifically talk about their emotions to kind of, like, if they're angry, they'll say something that makes them angry so that they can deal with that. I like it. I like to let the scanner just pick up whatever it is. But I will tell you that some things happened in my family of origin in the last year. We're working through it now and it's healing. But when it was really bad, I was crying a lot because I was so hurt. But what kept coming up on the scanner was sadness and anger, and that had not been coming up before. And interestingly enough, the minute I was able to have a discussion with my mother and my son and express where I was coming from, honestly, and kind of tell them some of the stuff that I've told you here that they never understood about me, I'm not getting sadness and anger on the scanner anymore. And so it just is fascinating to me how that thing can pick up things. We got a St. Bernard who developed hip dysplasia, and I used it for him. And he never saw the vet, but he couldn't go up and downstairs. He could barely get up and down out of the floor for about 4 or 5 weeks. And it really did help. So there are multiple things with this bioresonance, this technology, that is amazing. There's a lot of devices out there. They all do something a little different. This one just is very comprehensive and is also very affordable should one want to have one of their own to work with on a consistent basis.
Something I should look into maybe as part of my
I'll send you some information. I'll send you a little video introduction to kind of show you what it does. Yeah. It's a cool
who introduced it to you? So how did you find it? Or you just searched it online?
Now, the dentist that I used to work for, that's really where I became most sort of comfortable with bioresonance. And, but I know about Zytoscan, CyberScan, BioCharger, all of those. And I used to, with another dentist, run an integrative forum before 2020 where integrated providers would meet and we would all talk about what we were doing, support each other, help educate the community on non-conventional ways of healing. So one of the doctors that came to that actually became my partner and I's doctor. We still do IV ozone sometimes for Lyme disease. You always have to do maintenance with that stuff. And so he found it and he just sent me a message and he said, hey, I really think this might be something that you and Eric could work with because, he's 2 hours away and many things. I've dealt with many things, including recurrent cystitis for myself, where now I don't need to go for a blood test. I don't have to take an antibiotic anymore. I just am able to imprint homeopathics and run the scanner for it. And it's cleared it up. Each time since I've had the scanner. So a doctor actually introduced it to me. And then the dentist bought one, even though he has multiple types of bioresonance. He got his own.
He probably could afford it.
That's right. So it's a really cool technology that I think, look, if you've ever followed Joe Dispenza, his story of healing, and you can do this with your mind. You don't need a scanner to do it. However, it takes concentration, focused time and energy, and you have to do it. You have to do the work. Amy's program, the Sacred program, is really easy. 12 minutes a day and you're done. And then you keep that in your mind all day. But when you're really trying to heal some things, once it's manifested as a physical issue or an emotional issue, it takes work. And not everybody has the time or the energy. And once you're stressed, it's like by the time you're at the end of your day and you have time, all you want to do is find some coping thing, whether it's Netflixing out or
exactly, distraction.
You really don't have the energy to focus on yourself. And so for me, I don't know, this is probably not the best way to use the analogy, but it's kind of like an energetic pharmacy. It's everybody wants a pill. Well, this is a way, it's an intermediary. It's a way to start balancing imbalanced energy. And especially in the energy field, we know that 2 to 5 years out, Bioresonance can actually predict disease in the body. So when it's in the energy field, it's that the thing we call dis-ease. We get
Yeah.
some symptoms, but you go to the doctor, they can't figure it out.
Mm.
It's mystery symptoms, or you need an antidepressant or something. But eventually, if that energy is not dressed, it does step down. And then we also carry like ancestral miasms in our energy field that are there. I've seen things with people who have never had a drink in their life, and alcohol comes up as a toxicity for them. And they're like, oh my gosh, my so-and-so was an alcoholic. And it does, it clears out eventually with consistent scanning. So I think it's a really cool piece of technology.
But it's not the actual scanning that does the work. You have to do the work. It's the scanning just shows you the
Well,
pathway or what.
Okay, so it's a really good question. So it does send you frequencies that will balance the
All right,
energy.
okay.
And I can
Oh,
broadcast that stuff remotely, so it will optimize imbalanced energy. And we have a way of looking at the report that each scan will show you. Now, this is not the inner voice. Inner voice is different, but when we're looking at the body and the things that affect the body, like bacteria, viruses, things like that, or certain foods, certain chemicals. When we're looking at those things, the scanner looks at the previous scan and the current scan. And so when something shows up in red in the column, that means it's out of balance. And so over time, you can do these scans. And if you have double reds that do not clear up over a period of time, then you may want to go to the doctor and get some testing done, depending on what it is. But most of the time, it will clear it from a red to a green, meaning that it's balanced. So, and a lot of this stuff is just, I think, incoming. It's, if you have an actual disease going on in the body, I tell my clients, you don't stop your medicine, you don't stop going to the doctor. It's not a diagnostic, it's not medically diagnostic, it is energetically. And I won't even use the word diagnostic because of all the rules with medicine.
yeah, it's very stringent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know that. You've got your medical background.
Yes. I had to let my nursing license go because the civil rights didn't let me do what I wanted to do.
But yeah, you were one that wanted to break all the rules, isn't it? Anyway.
Yes, I did, and I did. But that is what I saw really wrong in the when I worked hospice. Even hospice people who did die, I watched many people do exactly what I'm talking about. Focus on, how did I get here? What happened in my life? And really come to terms with what they had gone through and develop. I mean, I'm getting chills right now. Just develop so much love towards the end of their life. And so the people who did heal, same as me, it was all the same thing. It's changing the narrative, the story we tell ourselves based on the data that we take into our brain that we think is the truth. And the truth is that I don't know if any of us really knows the truth unless we really know pure love. Everything else is perception and experience. And people challenge me, but then I challenge them right back. And I'm like, okay, tell me one thing that you know that you didn't learn from some external source. Now, some people are able to do that, like Amy. She's very tapped in, and she knows stuff that she isn't being told by another human on this plane. But for the average person, they can't come up with an answer. It's like everything they learned or they experienced, and that's what develops the narrative for us. And it's really scary when you start tearing your own narrative down. I tell people that my favorite quote is by Thomas Merton, and it's, what can we gain by sailing to the moon if we cannot cross the abyss to ourselves? And that was really powerful for me. Probably the quote that I read that kind of pushed me to go, what does that really mean? And really start looking at, well, what is the abyss to myself? And sometimes it's not pretty,
It's like facing your own
It is.
Finish it.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
But
There's the redemption, isn't it? There's love at the core. Yeah.
The freedom that comes, like I said about my mother being that I was like that too. I was the same way. I was just holding everything in my body and my cellular memory and just unable to let go of stuff and so fearful of everything. But I didn't know I was fearful. I'm brave. No, I wasn't. I was covering up my fear. That's what I was doing. And so the whole process of doing this is, in human design, we call it a shattering, because we learn to look at our own illusions. We learn to look at the story that we've created. And in the beginning, you start feeling like, gosh, I've lied to myself. I've wasted so much time, but that's not it. When you look at it from the spiritual perspective, no, you didn't. You learned what you needed to learn. Now you know better, do better. And that's
and help others get out of their own way as well.
Yep, that's a choice.
Yeah, it's a choice. Obviously, you don't have to do that. Even self-healing is a choice, and it is the paramount choice before you can help somebody else.
Yeah, it is.
Anyway, thank you. It's been such a magical time with you today. Sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Did I give you the email? Did I give you the email for requesting the scan?
What we can do, we can drop it in the comments. I'll add it in after, once we've concluded, and that way people can just click on the link as and automatically come through to your inbox then through their email provider. Yeah, that's great. So it's been really, really, really special. You have an amazing story to tell, as Amy said you had. So but yeah, and so where do you go from here now? I mean, you do know what you still have to contend with, or is there something? I don't really want to go into another long conversation, but what are you working on at the moment? What you've got to contend with? If you're able to share that, if that's something private, then please, tell me to mind my own business.
No, I'm not. I'm not really looking that far out. I told people I'm done with the 1-year plan, the 5-year plan. I don't care anymore.
Living from moment to moment.
Today, and today I choose love. I choose to be happy. I choose to be vital. I choose to help other people when they invite me to do so. But I do not choose to sit in fear and worry about what's going to happen tomorrow. It takes away my joy, and I'm done. That's my middle name.
Yes.
I'm going to own it.
Own it. Yeah.
Own it.
Thank you so much, Karan, and Karen Joy. And so for bringing us a bit of an insight and a bit of an eye opener really on our dis-ease and our situation with our own inner turmoils and challenges with relationships. So it's been really, really helpful, and I think people are curious about this scan. So if you are interested in taking up the offer, I don't know whether you've got a limit, because obviously that will be time consuming for you to administrate, but
Nope, I got a whole system in place. It's not hard. And I have some friends who also have a scanner who are willing to help me.
Can help.
So please ask. Yes.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I'm really grateful as well that you made the time for us and shared your story and shared your wisdom and your insights. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.